Hey guys. So I'm going to change directions now. I think I've done a great job of explaining, what we were fighting for. But now I want to start getting into the legal aspects, and I really want to highlight the areas in which, our Constitution has been just trampled all over. And this is important information, and I know it might be dry to some of you guys, but this is what's going to be coming out in the Emergencies Inquiries Act. The inquiry that's coming up. It was supposed to be in September. It's now been moved to October 13th. It's a commission that is ordered by the Rouleau Commission anytime the Emergencies Act has been declared. Now, I showed on a previous video the last time that it was implemented, and it's always been implemented during times of war or the FLQ crisis, which is a different story. But today I want to cover the guide to the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So it's just explaining what the Charter is, the overview. What is the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms? The Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms sets out those rights and freedoms that Canadians believe are necessary in a free and democratic society. The Charter is one part of the Canadian Constitution. The Constitution is a set of laws containing the basic rules about how our country operates. For example, it states the powers of the federal and provincial and territorial governments in Canada. There will be some sections that I will skip if it doesn't necessarily pertain to this, because I specifically want to get to the ones that were violated. So if I highlight it, I will include the link, and you can go and look at it yourself if you want to look at it further. So, how does the Charter work with other Canadian laws? The Constitution is the supreme law of Canada. All other laws must be consistent with the rules set out in it. If they are not, they may not be valid. Did you get that very important sentence? Let me read it again. The Constitution is the supreme law of Canada. All other laws must be consistent with the rules set out in it. If they are not, they may not be valid. Since the Charter is part of the Constitution, it is the most important law we have in Canada. However, the rights and freedoms in the Charter are not absolute. They can be limited to protect our rights or important national values. For example, freedom of expression may be limited by laws against hate propaganda or child P, which, yes, I agree. Section 1 of the Charter says that Charter rights can be limited by law so long as those limits can be shown to be reasonable in a free and democratic society. What does the Charter protect, and what rights are protected? Any person in Canada, whether they are a Canadian citizen, a permanent resident, or a newcomer, has the rights and freedoms contained in the Charter. There are some exceptions. For example, the Charter gives some rights to only Canadian citizens, such as the right to vote, which is Section 3 of the Charter, and the right to enter and remain in and leave Canada, which is Section 6. This part I'm going to skip. If you're interested in the history of the Charter, again, I will include the link when this video posts. So I'm just going to go to this part, and this is our Charter in a nutshell, okay? Understanding the Charter. This part of the guide sets out the actual text of each section of the Charter, followed by an explanation of its meaning and purpose. Guaranteed, so Section 1 is guarantee of rights and freedoms. I'm going to show it all below, but I want to tell you what they are. Fundamental freedoms is Section 2. Democratic rights is Section 3 to 5. Mobility rights is Section 6. Legal rights is Section 7 to 14. Equality rights is Section 15. Official languages of Canada is 16 to 22 sections. Minority language educational rights is Section 23. Enforcement is Section 24. There's general in Sections 25 to 31. The application of the Charter, Sections 32 and 33. Citation is Section 34. And the Constitution Act of 1982 is Section 52. Now, I'm going to highlight the ones that we're specifically arguing about so people get a better understanding of why we're so upset. Because I'm afraid that some people that are the most vocal in this cause, we're not on the same page. And maybe they have a different interpretation, or maybe it's affected them in a different manner. But I don't want to be put under the same umbrella, and unfortunately that's what's been happening. So guarantee of rights and freedoms, Section 1. Section 1 of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms guarantees the rights and freedoms set out in its subject only to such reasonable limits prescribed by law as can be demonstrably justified in a free and democratic society. Now, the man that wrote this, helped write this charter, the last living signatory, Brian Peckford, is challenging the charter because the government did not demonstrably prove. And again, that's going to come out in the inquiry. The Charter protects those basic rights and freedoms of all Canadians that are considered essential to preserving Canada as a free and democratic country. It applies to all governments. Let me read that again. It applies to all governments, federal, provincial, and territorial, and includes protection of the following: fundamental freedoms and democratic rights, the right to live and seek employment anywhere in Canada, legal rights, which are life, liberty, and personal security, equality rights for all, the official languages of Canada, minority language education rights, Canada's multicultural heritage, and Indigenous peoples' rights. They have their own as well. The rights and freedoms in the Charter are not absolute. They can be limited to protect other rights or important national values. For example, freedom of expression, we already went over that earlier. So, Section 2 is everyone has the following fundamental freedoms: freedom of conscience, and religion, freedom of thought, belief, opinion, and expression, including freedom of the press and other media of communication. That's being challenged in every single possible way because they're trying to censor our freedom of speech and already do anyways. The freedom of peaceful assembly, the freedom of association. I don't think there's one right in just Section 2 alone that they didn't trample all over in Ottawa. Under Section 2 of the Charter, Canadians are free to follow the religion of their choice. In addition, they are guaranteed freedom of thought, belief, and expression. Since the media are an important means for communicating thoughts and ideas, the Charter protects the right of the press and other media to speak out. Did you hear that? Other media? Vloggers, people with camcorders on their phones, because everybody is a journalist now. Our right to gather and act in peaceful groups is also protected, as is our right to belong to an association like a trade union. I won't get on the politics of that. These freedoms are set out in the Charter to ensure that Canadians are free to create and express their ideas, gather to discuss them, and communicate them widely to other people. These activities are basic forms of individual liberty. They are also important to the success of a democratic society like Canada. It's hard to read that and not laugh or kind of be insulted. In a democracy, people must be free to discuss matters of public policy, criticize governments, and offer their own solutions to social problems. Well, get me a friggin' pen and paper. Even though these freedoms are very important, governments can sometimes limit them, and they have, all of them, in my opinion, especially the ones I've just read. For example, we've already gone over that example, and I'm not going to repeat it. You can read it there. Democratic rights, Section 3 to 5 of the Act. Democratic rights of citizens, Section 3. Maximum duration of legislative bodies. I'm not interested in that because it doesn't pertain to what we're talking about. And then just basically the annual sitting of legislative bodies, Section 5. So in terms of how long they can sit in office and things like that. So every citizen, under Section 3 of the Act, every citizen of Canada has the right to vote in an election, which we agree. It guarantees to all Canadian citizens the right to be involved in the election of their governments. It gives them the right to vote in all legislative, federal, provincial, and territorial areas. Well, maximum duration. Okay, again, we're not going to worry about that. And we're not going to worry about Section 5 because it doesn't pertain to us. Section 6 pertains to us. It's mobility. rights. We, as Canadian citizens, every citizen of Canada has the right to enter, remain in, and leave Canada. Rights to move and gain livelihood. Subsection 2 of the Act. Every citizen of Canada and every person who has the status of a permanent resident of Canada has the right to A, to move and take up residence in any province, and B, to pursue the gaining of living in any province. Okay, well, they, during the C word, they limited that. They locked down our provinces and made it impossible to move. Limitation. The rights specified in subsection 2 are subject to A, any laws or practices of general application in force in a province other than those that discriminate amongst persons primarily on the basis of province or present or previous residence. B, any laws providing for reasonable residency requirements as a qualification for the receipt of publicly provided social services. So in other words, if you're collecting EI and you're out of Canada for 2 weeks or a week or whatever the hell it is, you have to declare it, or otherwise you're going to owe the government money back. 4 subsections for 2 and 3 do not preclude any law, program, or activity that has its object the amelioration in a province of conditions of individuals in that province who are socially or economically disadvantaged if the rate of employment in that province is below the rate of employment in Canada. Section 6 is important because, again, they locked us down. We could not move. Like, they even had Quebec on a curfew. They talked about doing it here. Section 6 protects the rights of Canadian citizens to move from place to place, and subsection 6.1 ensures that all Canadian citizens are free to come and go as they please. Extradition laws place some limits on these rights. These laws state that persons in Canada who face criminal charges or punishment in another country may be ordered to return to that country if it has an expedition or where they can extradite, Subsection 6 Code 2 gives all Canadian citizens and permanent residents the right to move to and live in any province or territory. They may also look for work or set up a business there. Subsection 6.3 makes clear that provinces and territories may decide to give social benefits, such as welfare, only to persons who have lived in the province or territory for a certain period of time. They may also pass employment laws that require workers to have the necessary qualifications to practice their profession or trade. In addition, subsection 6.4 allows a province or territory that has an employment rate below the national average to create programs that favor its own residents. Section 7 to 14 are our legal rights, which is Section 7 is life, liberty, and security of the person. That's a big one. Search or seizure. Detention or imprisonment is Section 9. Arrest or detention is Section 10. Proceedings in criminal and penal matters, Section 11. Treatment or punishment is Section 12. Self-incrimination is Section 13. So Section 7 to 14 set out rights that protect Canadians when dealing with the justice system. They ensure that individuals who are involved in proceedings are treated fairly, especially those charged with a criminal offense. Oh, really? Do tell, because a lot of the people that were put in jail for the same situation were not treated fairly. So Section 7 is life, liberty, and security of the person. Everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of the person, and the right not to be deprived thereof, except in accordance with the principles of fundamental justice. Section 7 guarantees the life, liberty, and personal security of all Canadians. It also requires that governments respect the basic principles of justice whenever they intrude on those rights. Are you listening? Section 7 often comes into play in criminal matters because an accused person clearly faces that risk that, if convicted, his or her liberty will be lost. Section 8 is search or seizure. So everyone has the right to be secure against unreasonable search or seizure. According to the Supreme Court of Canada, the purpose of Section 8 is to protect a reasonable expectation of privacy. This means that those who act on behalf of a government, such as police officers, must carry out their duties in a fair and reasonable way. They cannot enter private property or take things from others unless they can show they have a clear legal reason. Oh, really? Because they were taking gas cans off drivers that were using the fuel to heat their trucks in the winter with their children in the trucks, and they were confiscating those illegally. In most cases, they are allowed to enter private property to look only for evidence or to seize things only if they have been given a search warrant by a judge. I wonder if those guys that were grabbing the cans had a search warrant. My bet is no. On the other hand, government inspectors may enter business premises without a warrant to check if government regulations are being observed. That's a different thing. That's like a food inspector as far as I'm concerned, I think. Section 9 talks about detention or imprisonment. Everyone has the right not to be arbitrarily detained or imprisoned. Did you hear that one? Section 9 says that government officials cannot take individuals into custody or hold them without a good reason. For example, a police officer must have reasonable grounds for detaining a person. However, courts have stated that laws allowing officers to stop drivers for breath tests are reasonable. That's a different subject altogether, and that's not how I'm referring to the Charter in this sense. Section 10, arrest or detention. Everyone has the right on arrest or detention to A, to be informed promptly of the reasons therefor. So if they arrest you, they have to immediately tell you why. They have to give you the right to remain silent and read you your rights, and you to retain and instruct counsel without delay, and to be informed of that right. And if they don't, that's a technicality, and that's a different story altogether. To have the validity of the detention determined by way of habeas corpus, and to be released if the detention is not lawful. Oh, really? I believe somebody sat in jail for 160 days waiting to get a bail review. The right in Section 10 applies when a person is arrested or detained. They ensure that people under arrest have a chance to challenge the lawfulness of the arrest. The police must tell them quickly the reasons for their arrest. These people also have the right to talk to a lawyer to get legal advice about their situation, and the police must tell them what legal aid services are available in that area. Persons under arrest also have the right to ask a judge to decide whether their arrest was legal, and if it was not, to order their release. Oh, really? Wow. Section 11, proceedings in criminal and penal matters. Under Section 11, any person charged with an offense has the right to be informed without unreasonable delay of the specific offense, to be tried within a reasonable time, not to be compelled to be a witness in proceedings against that person in respect of the offense, to be presumed innocent until proven guilty according to law in a fair and public hearing by an independent and impartial tribunal. We've seen many instances, where that didn't happen. Not to be denied reasonable bail without just cause. That didn't happen either. Except in the case of an offense under military law, tried before a military tribunal to the benefit of trial by jury, where the maximum punishment for the offense of imprisonment for 5 years or a more severe punishment. Not to be found guilty on account of any act or omission unless at the time of the act or omission it constituted an offense under Canadian or international laws or was criminal according to the general principles of law recognized by the community of nations. If finally acquitted of the offense, not to be tried for it again and again. That's due process, right? Some people have, the no jeopardy. If finally found guilty and punished for the offense, not to be tried or punished for it again. If found guilty of the offense, and if the punishment for the offense has been varied between the time of commission and the time of sentencing to the benefit of the lesser punishment. Section 11 sets out several important rules that protect anyone charged with an offense under federal, provincial, or territorial law. Persons accused of a crime must be told promptly what offense they've committed under Section 11A. Their trials must take place within a reasonable amount of time. Section 11B, and they cannot be forced to testify at their own trial. They have the right to remain silent. Anyone accused of breaking the law is considered to be innocent until proven guilty. I would like to see proof of that, because we've seen many instances where that's not the case. This means that the prosecution must prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the person committed the offense before he or she can be found guilty. The trial must also be conducted fairly before a court which is unbiased and independent of political or any other influence. Section 11D of the Charter. A fair trial ensures that the rights of the accused are properly protected. An accused person is entitled to reasonable bail, Section 11E, and for very serious charges has the right to trial by jury, 11F. A court cannot convict a person of a crime unless the law in force at the time of the offense specifically stated that the actions in question were illegal, Section 11G. If a person is tried for an offense and found not guilty, he or she cannot be tried on the same charge again. Moreover, if the person is found guilty and punished for the offense, he or she cannot be tried again. That's Section 11H. In a situation where a person commits an offense and before he or she is sentenced, a new law changes the fine or term of imprisonment that applies, the person must be sentenced under whichever law is the more lenient, Section 11I. Section 12 is about treatment or punishment. Oh, jeez. The more I find out, it's just, wow. Section 12. Okay, treatment or punishment. Everyone has the right not to be subjected to any cruel and unusual treatment or punishment. Wow, does that even include by our government? Section 12 prohibits treatment and punishment by the state that are cruel and unusual. This includes torture, excessive or abusive use of force by law enforcement officials. I wonder if trampling people with horses is abuse of law enforcement officials. Also, sentences of imprisonment must match the seriousness of the crime committed. For example, an extremely long prison sentence is not appropriate for a very minor crime. Did you hear that? Because the people that I'm referring to have been charged with mischief and counseling to commit mischief. If it was bigger and as bad as the big bad press wants it to be, why weren't they charged with sedition? That says everything you need to know. Sedition is an act to overthrow the government. If you guys thought that you were really under an emergency and you needed to trample all over these rights that I'm reading you right now, wouldn't you have called it, a government overthrow or whatever the hell the terminology is? A witness who testifies in any proceedings has the right not to have any incriminating evidence so given used to incriminate that witness in any other proceedings except in a prosecution for perjury or for the giving of contradictory evidence. So all of the media by slamming him, by showing videos and things of that nature, you're tainting his right to a non-biased jury, which is also in his charter. And I hope he's listening. Section 13 states that witnesses who give evidence in court cannot have their testimony used against them in other proceedings. In other words, if the testimony of a witness shows that he or she has committed a crime, that evidence cannot be used by the prosecution to prove that the witness committed an offense. The exception is where a witness commits the crime of perjury, which is the offense of lying to the court. In that case, the testimony of the witness may be used to show that he or she lied in court, not on social media. So you guys better start to figure this out, because the lawsuits are rolling in. And then I'm not going to talk about the interpreter. You have the right to have an interpreter in your own language is basically that. The equality of rights is, we know what that is, equality and fair treatment for everyone. And that's where I'm going to leave it for now. So, again, I wanted to highlight all of these things and explain to people why some of us feel so strongly about what we do. Stay tuned. There's more coming.